Hello, Brad here, just to say we're super proud that the Friday 5pm podcast is sponsored by the Malt Miller, the UK's best home brew store.
We use the Malt Miller for all of our homebrew experiments, as well as tapping them up for advice and binging on their awesome YouTube channel all the time.
That's why whenever we release a homebrew video, we put a recipe kit live on the Malt Miller, so you can brew with the exact same amazing ingredients that we did. The same ingredients used by pro brewers.
So alongside the Malt Miller's nitro-flushed hops, cold-stored yeast and milled-to-order malts, you can pick up recipe kits for our 5 Points Best Bitter, Russian River West Coast IPA, and now the fastest beer in the world, a hazy session IPA that goes from grain to glass in less than 48 hours.
Sign up to their newsletter at tinyurl.com/Malt Miller to get 5% off your first order. With the Malt Miller's amazing customer service and Johnny's 48-hour recipe, you could order the ingredients on a Monday and be drinking the beer by the weekend.
Speaking of which, it's Friday.
It's 5pm.
So enjoy this week's Friday 5pm podcast. It's Friday, it's 5pm, and I join you from a bang average hotel room in the centre of Copenhagen.
Cool.
Where are you, Brad?
I'm sitting in my front room waiting for my new lava lamp to heat up.
Oh, okay. It's a very Brad sentence. I thought you were getting a new lava lamp, but you're waiting for it to heat up.
Yeah, I got two. They arrived yesterday, and I didn't realise how long they took to heat up the wax inside them. So, yeah, I've when I was a kid, my dad had a lava lamp, and I always thought it was amazing. So when it was my birthday a couple of weeks ago, I thought, oh, look on Mathmos, and I might treat myself to a lava lamp. And I worked out, well, I didn't work out. As soon as I went on the website, I saw it was their 60th birthday, Johnny. 60 years they've been making lava lamps, and they made a load of special edition ones. So I bought a Rankin one. Rankin, the photographer, has designed a lava lamp. Yeah, quite random. Which is very, very cool. It says it's like blue, anodized blue aluminium with a blue, and I think they call it aquamarine filling in it. And then it's got this. They've turned the aluminium, so the like base and the top of it. They turn it so it's got grooves in it, and they call it a vinyl lava lamp, right? And then it's anodized blue. It's got Rankin written on it. And on the top it says, "Let there be light." So that's pretty cool. And then the other one I got is by this... she's quite a superstar sort of design lady called Camilla Walalala. I'm not quite sure how you say her second name. But I
think that's right. I hope that's right.
I hope that's right too. As you walk around London, you see quite a lot of buildings that have got like massive geometric, colourful murals on. And she's responsible for them. So she's sort of inspired by Memphis Group Design, which is like an 80s design movement. Very colourful block colour stuff with like polka dots and all sorts of things. So I was expecting that to be like a colour bomb of a crazy explosion of colour design. Anyway, it's a very much the opposite. And it's sort of this black and white optical art, sort of laser etched matte black Darth Vader looking one with a purple and red filling inside it. They're pretty cool, man. I must say I do like them. But I'm thinking, why did I buy two lava lamps, Johnny? Because probably one man only needs one, but I couldn't decide which one I wanted. And also they're sort of, we talk about people reselling beer on the web and stuff. These fuckers are reselling for like 4 times the price you pay for them. So I was like, I'll just buy two, keep the one that I like best, and sell the other one. It'll pay for it. And now I've got them, I'm sort of thinking I might just keep both. But they're pretty cool. Have you ever had a lava lamp in your life, Johnny?
Yeah, my brother, when I was a kid, had a lava lamp in his room, and I was very envious of it.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that lava lamps give off absolutely zero light. or at least this one did.
There's not a lot of light coming out of it, that's for sure.
Yeah, they're not really functional lights. They're they're adornments. They're not functional
Well,
light pieces.
I tell you what, it took 3 hours for them to heat up last night, and they
3 hours.
3 hours. Yeah, it was the first time
Yeah.
using them. Apparently, it takes longer, and there's a warning.
Okay.
It says don't leave them on for longer than 6 hours. So you have to wait for
So you only
three
get 3 hours of
hours.
enjoyment.
Yeah, hopefully it's not the same every time. I think that was the first use, Johnny. But when you turn them on, they look very disappointing, and they don't look like beautiful globulous nebulous bubbles floating up and down that are soothing. They look like stalagmites, or is it? Yeah, stalagmites coming up. In like it looks like wax. They look like aliens that are creeping. I don't know if you've ever seen. I think it was a David Attenborough thing, where they go to the water underneath the ice in the Arctic, and you get these mad shards of like frozen ice that are like they look like lightning strikes that are coming from above, and they go down into the deep. And they've done time lapses where these sort of they'd be stalactites because they're on the top. But they come down, and then they just basically freeze anything below them. So they've got all these sort of giant starfish and crabs and shit that are wandering around on the seafloor. If they happen to get anywhere near the like super freezing zone, they just get frozen in time. And it reminded me of that. But after 3 hours, Johnny, very soothing. And I found myself looking at them rather than looking at the TV screen. It was quite late last night, so
Wow.
I was entranced by the
I mean, I
the wonder.
always it took like 20 minutes
Yeah.
maybe for the lava lamp my brother had, and I took when he moved to uni. Didn't take his lava lamp to university. I think he was worried that people would mock him for it,
Oh,
and I was very excited to get it. And it was just enough light to read by, so you turn it on, and basically you turn it off just as the bubbles started going when you were ready for sleep. So you never really actually saw the lava effect.
This
Or
is
at least
what
I
I'm
didn't with my one.
this is what I'm concerned about. I feel like it might be something that on paper seems amazingly cool, but in practice you're like, this is totally impractical. Oh fuck, I've got to remember to turn it off because it'll burn. And like it's taken so long to heat up, but I haven't.
Yeah, well, I
seen
mean,
any
nobody
bubbles.
buys a lava lamp for its practicality, right?
I just
You
think,
should have known that one going in.
yeah, yeah. I
I
actually,
mean, nobody buys a lava lamp. Let's be honest. Like,
yeah,
I don't really know how or why they've become this weird. It's a bit like, I don't know, like quicksand as a kid. Was just like everything, and then you grow up, and I haven't thought about quicksand for 20 years, and I feel the same about lava lamps.
Well, I can tell you this, Johnny. So obviously, Mathmos, they're quite a small company. I've sort of deep dived into them. They bought the original sort of person that invented the lava lamp was a naturist oddball that liked getting naked and fruity, and also bottling jars of weird things. And then he sort of worked out how the wax and the water or whatever it is could interact with heat. And then people went to him to buy the idea off him, and he demanded that they meet him naked to do the deal.
What?
Yeah, it's really really odd. So I think they refused to meet him naked, and they left it a bit longer. But eventually, he was he was rich, eccentric. I think he had like a manor or something. Anyway, these guys bought it off of him, and the factory is in Poole in Dorset. They make the glass containers. They're just bottles. When you take the tops and bottoms off, they're like a funky shaped bottle. But the original guy used to just buy bottles of some soda. Can't remember what it was. That was what he was using. He'd buy them full of soda, and then just tip the soda away and fill them up with his waxy concoctions. But yeah. So anyway, you said, why does anyone? And you're right. Like they hadn't really been on my radar for a long time, Johnny. But this one little campaign, they had 5 different lava lamps. They got Duran Duran to do one. They got like a conceptual artist to do one. That was who I really wanted. I wanted a conceptual artist one, but it was sold out. And some other dickhead who I didn't like their one. But anyway, Johnny, they're £130. This is a money spinner. £130 each.
So you spent £260 on lava lamps last week.
I'm slightly regretting it. Yeah. So there's £130 each, right? And then there's six.
Did you get free shipping at least?
Yeah. There's 600
Okay,
of each, right? 600 of each design, which is quite limited. And then there's 5 designs. How much money do you think that's made Mathos? They all sold out instantly, right? Each one of these sold out instantly. So I don't know how long it takes to manufacture and fill and ship this amount of bottles, but they did it within a few weeks. Guess how much money they made?
What, 3,000 lava lamps?
Yeah.
In total, selling for £130 each.
Yeah.
So that's.
Oh god, you're actually going to work it out.
That's £300,000.
Yeah. 300
plus another.
Yeah.
Yeah, like 350 grand.
Pretty close. £390,000 in like a month. I was like, that's a bit of a windfall, isn't it?
Yeah, but don't forget they haven't sold a lava lamp for the last 20 years. So
they've had me looking at them
right.
periodically, because they do like a oil projector as well, which is like very psychedelic. Yeah.
I've got to move this along.
You
this
can move
is 10 minutes
now.
of lava lamp chat.
You can move it. Come on, let's go.
I don't want to know about the oil-based projectors.
I hear you're enjoying some bottles of a different kind, Johnny.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's neat. So I'm in Copenhagen researching for my next book. So I spent all of yesterday and will be spending the rest of today at Carlsberg. Not something I thought I'd say back when we started the craft beer channel, but I've had probably the most mind-altering couple of hours yesterday that I don't think I'm going to be able to do justice to the time that I had. So I met with 4 different people yesterday. One, Birgit, who is the head of the yeast lab. They reckon it's the biggest collection of yeasts in the world, about 40,000 different strains, of which 6,500 are sort of like characteristically very different, not just sort of near brothers and sisters. And there are some incredible yeast in there, very, very similar to what we saw at the Norwich Yeast Bank, sort of deep freezing, lots of propagating up and all that kind of stuff, and sending out to about 200 breweries that are licensed to make Tuborg and Carlsberg and all those different brands. So that was fascinating. Learned a huge amount about the origin of Carlsbergiensis, which is the first isolated lager yeast. That's why I'm here to understand the work of Emil Christian Hansen, who first isolated yeast and made modern brewing essentially possible, and modern clean brewing. But I then got to dig into the archive with Linda, where I discovered lots of other incredible things. Literally handled, like Emil had these leather-bound, leather-bound sort of booklets in which he had slides of different kinds of yeasts. Like he had like a Brett slide and his own sort of lager yeast slides, and literally held that. Got to dig in some incredible books. Learned that so the Carlsberg Laboratory, which was founded by JC, the guy that founded Carlsberg, has done all kinds of incredible science, mostly in the name of brewing, but also lots of other weird things, which they don't do anymore, but like they tracked, like they found out where some rare form of eel breeds and all kinds of stuff just because they were fascinated by it. It's like they sort of had carte blanche to investigate what they wanted. But they invented the pH scale there, which basically made sort of biochemistry an exact science for the first time. So I've been learning all about that, and they had this approach. So when they first isolated yeast, they said anybody can have this yeast and this process. They didn't charge people for it, although Emil wanted to. So they had this ethos that anything they discovered at the Carlsberg Laboratory was for the world to use. And that's a big reason why lager spread so fast after that happened, because suddenly everybody had access to this pure pitch of this very good lager yeast. But there's so many other things that have come out of it, and that's what my book is about, as people probably know because I keep banging on about it. It's about how beer has changed the world. But the most incredible thing I did yesterday was I just spent it's supposed to be 4 or 5 minutes, but turned into 2 hours with the two people that lead the sort of the R&D department at Carlsberg. So these people have access to the most incredible stuff. They can use everything from the laboratory. So the laboratory is now divided into three. It's got a brewing and yeast department. It's got a technology department where they're working on new equipment and new techniques in brewing, and then they've got a raw materials department. So they're crossbreeding their own hops, crossbreeding their own barleys, and playing around with barleys from all over the world. So these brewers have like this dream job where lots of the time it's just like we've got this new technique we might use to make Carlsberg Pilsner more efficient or something. Can you test it on this tiny scale? And they've built this kit that is unreal and recreates their main kit. So it's only what was it? I think it's 300 liters. But even the fermenters, it's so exact to the main brewery that even the fermenters they're pressurized to recreate the situations, like the pressure of the amount of liquid in a huge tank. So they're pressurized these little tanks to make it feel for the yeast like it's in these giant tanks and stuff like that. It's incredible stuff that they've done. But they get to use all these incredible, unusual ingredients that nobody has access to. So I tried a beer they put together called the Tears of Enzo, which is reference to Enzo Ferrari, because the beer is sort of a reddish pink. And they poured it for me, and they said, what flavors are you getting? What style of beer do you think this is? And it tasted like, I don't know, like a lightly fruited kind of raspberry sour, I guess, with a bit more character, like loads of kind of lactic, yogurty character and stuff. And they're like, what fruit do you think's in this? And I was like, well, I'm not getting any tannins or anything, so I'm a bit suspicious. Why are you asking me this? That makes me suspicious. But if I had to pick a fruit, I'd say cranberry. Probably it had it's just like cranberry without the tannins. And there was no fruit in it, but it was bright red. And it was this specific form of barley that's huskless. So in nature, it had to develop a way to stop UV light damage and stuff. So it has this purple kind of skin to it.
Wow.
Which turned the beer red and also makes it taste like kind of strawberry, cranberry, cherry kind of flavors. And they pitched initially used a lactobacillus culture, special lactobacillus culture. They didn't tell me any more about. They created this lemony yogurt kind of character, really strong, and then fermented it with a wine yeast. They gave this beer to the chef at Alchemist, which is the second best restaurant in the world, I think, in Copenhagen. He loved it so much, he bought all of it, put it in his restaurant, started charging €300 a bottle, and sold out in a weekend.
He charged €300 a bottle for this Carlsberg Tears of Enzo beer.
Yep.
Wow.
And sold out in a weekend, and was like, I need more. And they were like, this was just for fun. This was just a pilot batch.
I wonder how much he bought it for.
I don't think it was much. I don't think it was much at all.
Amazing.
It just, when you own the second best restaurant in the world, your wine list probably starts around €100 for a bottle of wine, and he just sort of slipped it in with those.
Yeah.
But it was a delicious beer.
Wow.
They then gave me a black barley version, which weirdly, like the pigment from the black barley, which is black for the same reason, doesn't translate. So it was sort of a pretty normal coloured kind of beer. And then I had a 100% wheat Baltic porter.
Blimey.
So generally you can't brew with 100% wheat. It doesn't have the fermentable sugars and stuff. So they had to use enzymes to sort of break out that sugar and make it fermentable. But yeah, they did that, and then used different roasted wheats to create the flavour, and then loaded it with cacao nibs, and it was absolutely stunning, absolutely delicious. And then I had, this is one you're going to love.
Yeah.
Oh wait, go on.
No, you tell me more, and then I will say what I was going to say.
Okay. So this is the one that you're going to love. Zoran, who runs the program, he loves barley wine, but all of his wine geek friends, most of his friends are wine lovers. He'd bring barley wines to them, and they'd be like, we're enjoying this, but it's far too sweet to drink, more than one glass of. So he was like, right, and he went back into work and was like, "We need to make a barley wine that is like as dry as like a white a dry white wine,
Blimey.
which is pretty hard to do with beer to get it that dry and that alcoholic.
Yeah.
So what they did was they turned to NASA
No.
because they heard about this filter, right? That's used in space travel. It's a mesh that you pee into, and a couple of hours later, it's filtered everything out, so you're just left with the water, the H2O afterwards, pure water,
Nice.
and that's what they drink.
Yes.
So they were like, "What if we do that, and we'll strip out like pretty much everything and end up with a concentrated beer?"
Oh.
So a bit like sort of the ice distillation.
Yeah.
But it takes instead a couple of hours.
Huh.
So they got a can of 5% Tuborg, blasted it through this filter, and created a 25% alcohol barley wine with 4 times the amount of sugar that's in Tuborg, which is still very, very low in sugar. And it still presents quite sweet, you know, it's boozy, slightly phenolic, kind of oxidized as well. It's got some oxidation kind of character to it, so it feels like an aged barley wine. But it was just a lager that had been blasted through a filter for a couple of hours.
So, does it go through the filter more than once? How does it work?
No, you only have to do it once.
So it's an incredibly fine filter that only allows smallest particulates through it, kind of thing. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I need to dig into the science more of it because I think it has to go into the book. I'm not quite sure where. It hasn't changed the world. It's sort of an inverse. It's how space has improved beer rather than how beer has improved space. But it was such a fantastic experience with these guys.
Do we need to go and make a film there, Johnny? Have you already made a film while you were there?
No, I haven't touched the camera. They invited us back. They said, "Let's brew something with the Craft Beer Channel." So Zoran is a Craft Beer Channel fan, which was very exciting to hear.
That is cool.
And he was late for his wife's birthday to come have some beers with us.
Oh man.
Apparently his wife called up and was like, "Are you going to come pick me up?" And he was like, "Oh, I'm with Johnny from the Craft Beer Channel."
Shit.
And apparently she said, "Well, tell him to fuck off," which is fair.
That's amazing. That is amazing. This generally sounds pretty cool. Like way cooler than I was expecting. Let's go back to eels a little bit because I'm quite interested in eels. Nobody knows where eels reproduce. It's a huge mystery. So you said they tracked eels. Is that what you said?
Yeah. So what they did was they went to a location where they knew there were a ton of eels.
Yeah.
And they put little messages in bottles. They dropped, I guess, hundreds or thousands of them into the water.
Yeah.
And then the currents obviously carried that away.
Right.
And so it was washing up on beaches and all kinds of stuff. And they were asking people to, like, in that message in a bottle was a thing going like, "Hey, can you send an email to this address?"
An Eel-mail.
Saying, "This is where I found it."
An
Eel-mail.
Come on.
Shit, that's strong. Podcast title right there. And that's how they worked out like where the currents were going from there, so they'd know where to look for the eel breeding because that's most likely where.
So they think they just follow the currents. That's what Carlsberg think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, these little fuckers, they're crazy. They when they're like, I think they're called Elvins or whatever, they go like upstreams, they can climb out of water and like sort of snake along, do all kinds of crazy stuff. I think it's the European eel. We call it European eel. No one knows where it goes all the time. I'm pretty sure that doesn't have any reproductive organs when you dissect it. So they're like, literally, people have no idea how eels reproduce. So my theory is there's probably it's not a theory, I'm just joking, but there could be a giant queen eel somewhere.
Right.
That's
could be.
That's just doing. That's just like, a giant mega eel that's pumping out eel babies. But I don't think that's the case. Who knows, man? Eels are very interesting, strange creatures.
Well, I'll ask them to send me the research, and you can
Yeah,
see
yeah.
if your theory might agree with where they landed.
I don't that isn't actually my theory. I'm just not
No, it
sure.
is. It is.
Okay,
You don't want
okay.
to. You're unsure about it. You don't want to make a fool of yourself. But this could be a great discovery. Maybe they haven't
Uh,
considered
a
giant
giant
queen eel.
a giant queen eel, very much like a Jason Statham movie, like Megalodon or the Meg, whatever it's called, where there's a
Yeah, it's gonna be the
giant
next
prehistoric eel,
Yeah.
mega eel. They've got, let's face it, the best or the second best slogan in beer. Do they still use it? Probably the best lager in the world. I think they still use
Well,
it,
it's
right?
still
Or
on
have
lots of their branding, but
Right.
they did that famous campaign where it was probably not the best beer in the world, and they modified the recipe slightly, which was good. It was good. It was good advertising. It was strong. Um,
That did you know
you know,
who?
I
Go on.
who came up with it?
Yeah, you know who came up with the
No.
tag. So it's quite interesting. It was Saatchi and Saatchi Advertising Agency, right? So just having a little, I knew that already, but I just had a little quick Google, and they marketed it as a blonde beer in the UK with supposedly had a lighter formula, which they hoped would appeal to women in the UK. Unfortunately, this didn't catch on. So Saatchi and Saatchi were required to come up with a clever slogan, which is where the definitely probably the best lager in the world came from. In 1973, they came up with that, Johnny. The strapline was first voiced in 1975 by Orson Welles.
What?
Yeah, Orson Welles apparently did the voiceover. I wasn't aware of that. Who apparently they used for years before he became too expensive, and they replaced him with a Canadian voiceover artist called Bill Mitchell. And that's all I'm willing to go into there on the facts, Johnny.
All respect to Bill, not as exciting as using
Yeah,
Orson
yeah.
Welles.
And can you tell me? You said there were many fine leather bound books that you saw. You said they had slides of yeast in them, yeast strains and stuff.
Yeah, I mean
there's
the yeast
glass.
had long since degraded,
Yeah, of course.
sadly.
But
So
are
it was
they
just
in?
like the actual glass.
They're in glass slides within a book.
Yeah.
Somehow, how did they fix the glass slides to a page in a book? How did it work? It must have been quite complicated.
I mean, so it's not. They were sort of clipped. So they were slides that were just sort of clipped in with a bit of
Yeah.
like a brass kind of staple.
Wow. And was it like
thing.
kind of lots of notes all around it? Or was it quite ordered?
There were some notes around it. There were lots more notes in sort of so. Obviously, there were scientific papers and books, and the Carlsberg Laboratory published like an annual of all of its sort of scientific discoveries and papers, and there were notes all over that in Emil's handwriting, which was pretty incredible to see. You know, this man, one of the most famous scientists. Well, maybe not one of the most famous. I mean, the famous person from that era is Pasteur, but actually, what Emil did was say Pasteur was wrong. So Pasteur said, you know, beer goes bad because of bacteria, and Emil went, some beer goes bad because of bacteria. Actually, a lot of it goes bad because of other yeasts, because nobody had really considered Saccharomyces as like having lots of different variants. It was just like, this is yeast, this is different bacteria. And what he did was look at it under a microscope, see they were different shapes, see that they were different shapes according to how they were treated, see that, you know, there were different variants, and managed to then isolate, as far as I can tell, manually, like literally under a microscope with a very fine pipette, like literally taking yeast cells that looked identical and taking enough of them that he could then start propagating them. And then he created what's called the Carlsberg flask, which is sort of the second step in the propagation of yeast. He created that flask, and that allowed for propagation of sole strains for the first time. So he was, you know, rightly criticizing Pasteur, but he's nowhere near as famous, because I think, you know, Emil's invention has so much potential, much of which have been fulfilled, but there's still more potential for what he's sort of discovered in terms of biofuels and all kinds of stuff. But Pasteur, you know, discovering the role of bacteria and the role of yeast in fermentation and stuff like that. That is seen as sort of the greater discovery, but it's not necessarily true. Emil's work is seminal. And so it's exciting that I get to tell hopefully that story in a bit more depth than before, because he was a bonkers person. His dad was bonkers. His dad was like this gypsy nomadic painter.
Wow.
And was also a spy for the Prussian state at one point, and all kinds of stuff, and treated his son like absolute dirt. Like, there's a famous story of him. He was a painter. He used to take his son everywhere. He used to get very, very drunk, and then his son would basically have to get him home. His son's like 6 at this point.
Jesus.
And one time, their wagon full of paint broke down, so the dad just took as much paint as he could carry and left his son in the middle of winter to guard the rest of his paints till he got back in the morning. So like this sort of built this incredible, quite difficult character, who sort of went on to change the world. And that story's, I think, quite famous within scientific circles, but not really outside of it. So it's exciting to be able to hopefully tell that story and do it justice.
Yeah.
And that's before we even get onto the pH meter, or the pH scale rather, that I won't talk about here because it's not as exciting a story. But obviously that changed the world as well, and made created a sort of language for talking about certain bioreactions, basically. The other thing I've been doing, a bit less scientific, a bit less Carlsbergy, is I also went to the former site of Noma, the world's best restaurant, which is now a restaurant called Bar, Barr, which is sort of, it is a fine dining place, but most of it's sort of based on more traditional, like, home Danish cooking, or I think they call it like northern seaboard cooking, or what sort of happened in sort of northern Germany and Denmark and that sort of thing. So Torsten, who's the head chef, sort of elevates the food that he grew up eating. And he's a big beer lover. So there's the fancy restaurant, which you need reservations for, and is I think fairly hard to get into. Then they have the bar where you need no reservations. You can walk up, sit at the bar, and eat the same food that's in the restaurant next door. So I spent Wednesday night sat in a beautiful, you'd love it, like it's like the galley of a ship, like beautiful woodwork everywhere. Eating, I had butter poached squid with jalapeno oil and white currant sauce. I had beef tartare with smoked mayonnaise and chervil, and then I had a schnitzel with caper butter, burnt Brussels sprouts, and horseradish cream, all while just drinking my way across the 18 taps that they have. Just like beer and food in a way I haven't really experienced, because restaurants just don't really take beer seriously still. There might be the odd lambic on a wine menu, or there might be some IPAs in a can, or some fancy lager that isn't that fancy or that good. But yeah, it was a remarkable thing. And if you're a beer and a sort of Scandi food lover, don't sleep on this place. It's absolutely amazing. And every night I've tried to go other places and be like, I could just go back to Bar and have another schnitzel and some Vienna lager. Like, it's a special place. I always forget. Copenhagen is a special place. I always forget. I thought it'd be quite hard to dodge Mikkeller because I don't want to support them until they sort their stuff out. But it's been dead easy. There's some fantastic bars, even though Mikkeller owns about 30 in the town.
Yeah, crazy. I was all over the Instagram stories you were posting about the beers you were drinking and the food you were eating. It did look very elevated, Johnny. It looked pretty great, to be honest.
It was, and it's not really my style of food, but it was delicious, and I liked that element of like it being sort of traditional Danish food elevated. So the schnitzel wasn't sort of small portions, lots of acidity and fancy presentation. There were elements of it, but it was still like a bloody delicious schnitzel.
A bloody delicious schnitzel. Johnny, it's famously expensive in Copenhagen. How much did a night at Bar cost you? How much did it set you back?
How much do you think it would? So it was 4 courses and 5 beers.
Was it like a set course? Did you do like a set menu?
Yeah, I did the set menu. Yeah.
And were the beers an accompaniment to it, or did you choose the beers?
I chose the beers. They did have an accompaniment, but
Yeah.
the list was all Belgian, and I was like,
Ah,
I didn't
okay.
come to Copenhagen to drink Belgian beer. I
Crazy.
want to drink Danish beer.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so and what size beers are we talking? Like a halves or something, or
Yeah, like the smaller pour, probably 200 ml.
okay. So
So big wine glass.
I'm going really underestimating how much the beer cost. I want to say 50, but I'm going to say £60 for the beer, and then you have 4 courses of food. So I mean, that's got to cost £120 at least. So I'm going to go for £180, I think.
Okay, are we including tip?
Oh, I hadn't considered tip. Let's round it out to 200 quid, including a tip.
Okay, I paid 98.
Wow, okay. I mean, that looked amazing, to be honest. £98, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, that's very expensive, but also it sounds like you had a great night out. And it's
I mean, for
going to be
5 beers and 4 courses,
yeah.
I think that's incredible value.
Well, that's nowhere near what I was expecting.
And that includes tip, yeah. Yeah. This story of Copenhagen being incredibly expensive is slightly overplayed. It's the same price as London.
No,
And
come on, that can't
yeah.
be true. I've never
Yeah.
been to Copenhagen,
Yeah.
so I don't know, but I know it's famously expensive. I know
No.
London is now becoming crazy to buy a pint of beer, but
No, I mean a pint will cost you the same as in London, although it's not a full pint. It's not 5, 6, 8, obviously. But what's important to remember in all of the Scandi countries is that craft beer and macro beer cost roughly the same.
yeah, they're on the same
Until
playing
you're going
field.
into bottles and getting very fancy. You know, the price differential isn't that much. So yeah, if you're drinking Carlsberg, it feels pretty expensive.
Do you
If you're
think
drinking, a locally made IPA, it's not really.
do you think that the way it's set up over there, with how they kind of tax breweries and the beer and everything, do you think it makes more of a level playing field for the small guys against macro, right?
Well,
In a way.
I mean, 100% from a cost perspective, yes, it makes it much easier. But also, we come from the UK where more than half of the taps are literally inaccessible to small brewers.
Yeah.
So in the UK, it's much harder to find independent, exciting beer. Here, every restaurant you go into will have something local, unless Carlsberg has come in and done everything it can to be like just use us. And yeah, I ate at a restaurant last night where there was no craft beer; it was just Carlsberg brands, and that was a bit disappointing to see, especially since it's like quite famous for having amazing wine. And then if you want to drink beer, it's Carlsberg or Kronenberg White. That's kind of ridiculous, particularly because that was in the meatpacking district as well, where obviously there's Arben, which is Uber, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it. A with a thing over the top, Ben, which I visited, had a nice tour with Jack, the head brewer, and actually only brewer, although he's making 10,000 hectolitres of beer, so he's a busy man.
Wow.
Had some delicious beer from them, a really good Rauch beer, which has a dark story to it, which I don't know whether it's public knowledge, so I probably can't say, but they brew a Rauch beer on a certain day when somebody got burned.
Oh, God.
I had a fresh hop pilsner that was really, really great, double decocted, Quell melon pilsner that was amazing, and they're making great beer, and that's just around the corner from a place that only serves you Carlsberg but does great malt. So you gotta take the rough with the smooth. But yeah, so I mean, Copenhagen, like, it is expensive, but what am I trying to say? It's expensive to have crap stuff.
Yeah.
And it's expensive, only slightly more expensive to have really nice stuff. So I guess that's
you might as well go for it.
I'm trying to say.
It's probably like
Exactly, yeah. If you go to Copenhagen, don't try and scrimp.
Yeah.
Because there's great stuff at pretty reasonable prices. If you go sit at the bar in bar, you'll have a 4-course meal and 5 beers for 100 quid. It's really, you wouldn't get that in London. There's absolutely no way.
No. From a 1 to 10 rating, how stylish is the average person walking around or bicycling around Copenhagen? They look quite stylish.
yeah, stylish in a very restrained way.
Yeah, that
You
is.
know, like, and also the
Yeah,
architecture is very stylish but very restrained.
yeah,
It's all kind
tasteful.
of beige and black,
Mm.
and nice cushions on bare oak, and um, yeah, it's weird because like this word hoogie is thrown around a lot, and people seem to think that it's like lots of cushions and being comfortable and a bit cutesy, and it's like it's definitely not. It's like this feeling of coming in from a storm and there being candlelight and real wood, and you don't want to leave, but it's not. It's not necessarily about comfiness. It's about or coziness. It's about um,
Welcoming
I mean, I don't know.
environments
There's
that are
yeah,
in from the harsh kind of cold climate potentially, and all that kind of stuff. Well, it's
yeah,
very
and
very
this sort of
warm in
feeling that
the
you don't want to leave and you're there with friends and it's all very convivial and
yeah.
sharing tables and all this kind of stuff. It's kind of um, it's just an incredibly welcoming place everywhere you go, and not even the really fancy places don't feel exclusive. Um, which is why, I mean, I guess to some extent why there's a bar element to this quite fine dining place. It's sort of saying anybody can come and enjoy this, but if you want like the white tablecloth full service thing, you can have that. I mean, even that, I mean, I was sat at the bar like I would in any bar, and still the chefs were coming and presenting it and talking me through the dish, which was a bit weird, particularly when there's only one of you and you just have to stare them dead in the eye and go, I don't know what a Mexican cucumber is, but I'm going to nod politely.
Is everyone as handsome and beautiful as Mads Mikkelsen? That's what I kind of think of as a Danish sort of look, very sort of
You're asking me to
chiseled,
judge an entire
stylish.
nation on their
Yeah, yeah,
looks.
yeah. Well, I reckon
Sure.
Copenhagen's probably got like. Is this getting a bit too objectified? I really like Mads Mikkelsen. I think he's a great actor, and he looks cool. Uh, but yeah,
I mean,
he
it's
is.
important to remember that Copenhagen is a super
Yeah,
diverse.
yeah, that's true. That's
Like
true.
the first language is almost English, because that's how they all communicate. Because there's so many different nationalities here and
Yeah.
so many tourists,
Ma-
so it's probably not the best representation
no.
of Denmark as a whole.
Although Mads Mikkelsen did have an ad campaign for Carlsberg, where he's
He
riding a
did.
bicycle around and doing all
There's
sorts
one
of
on a
shit.
boat as well, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
he's done a couple of them.
yeah, and I'm out of Mads Mikkelsen. Well, I'm not really. I could talk about his films, but I won't. Another
Because
round.
we've done the whole lava lamp thing already.
That's a good one. Another round's a good one about a drinking themed Mads Mikkelsen film.
You've
Highly
talked about that one
recommend
on the podcast before.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Highly recommend that. There's a Nicholas Winding Refn film, which I don't necessarily recommend to people that don't like really slow films. But I can't remember what it's called. But he plays a one-eyed Viking who
Sure.
goes to the New World and it's really fucking slow, but it's quite cool. It's from years ago. That's the guy that directed Drive. Did this mad film years ago with him, where he's
Went
just
mad with Mads.
yeah, he's just brutal in it. He's just like this brutal Viking that's got like one eye and just like a beast. Yeah, so don't watch that one. But he's in lots of good films. Johnny. I've only seen
just
one
remembered
bad film he's in.
Still going?
Go on.
I was going to say we forgot we were going to right at the top of this podcast do an update on our friend at Xingtao,
Yeah, we were.
which we've entirely neglected because I know that people have spent the entire week wondering what happened to the man who peed into the tank at Qingtao.
Yeah.
The latest update is that he's been detained, which is a slightly frightening phrase.
It is in China.
I believe detained by the police.
God. Okay.
It's a certain kind of law where he will be detained for a couple of days for criminal damage and then fined. So not a happy ending for him. But the story is that the tank was already empty, which he didn't look in the video, but apparently it was empty. It was after he doesn't work for the brewery. He works for a company that they've outsourced to for the delivery of grain. And he weed in the back of the truck because he fell out with the driver.
Okay.
Is the story.
That's the best that the Pissing Tao marketing department could come up with, is it?
Pissing Tao Strong again. They've isolated, I guess, the truck and the ingredients just in case it wasn't his first wee. And he's going to be detained and hopefully fined and released.
Did you
I
just
don't know
say
what's going to happen to the driver. What did the driver do?
Who knows? Did you just say they've isolated his wee? Did you just say they got a sample of his wee?
No. Isolated the malt.
Oh, the malt. Right, okay.
The barley, yeah.
I just
in
heard...
case it wasn't his first.
I heard, like, you isolate the wee as if they were going to do some sort of crime scene investigation thing where they were going to, check his wee with a UV light and then shine it in the giant tanks of pissing towel beer to see if it had the same piss in it.
I'm a bit worried about pissing towel. I think someone's going to come for us for that.
No.
But anyway, so the main reason I wanted to bring that up is to check in on our guy. Hopefully he's going to be okay long term. We got a message from Chris Wagner about that section of our podcast, and he said, "Just listen to your latest podcast, Conspiracy Theories." He enjoyed it too. First, he'd say that your pronunciation of the beer city name Angambay or Gambay were not very good.
Oh,
that's fair. But you're right that Gambay is not very reverent. They use it too much, but is not supposed to be used the same as cheers. They'll use it when they want to impress someone. When you know the person well, they will say no to you trying to cheers them with Gambay. So essentially, they were impressing the guests or having a joke on the guests when they were doing it to us. No other word is really used for cheers, so it's not technically cheers, but they don't have another word for it.
Wow.
He then goes on to say that there's so much beef between China and South Korea, which is the country that's really gone to town on this story, that it wouldn't surprise me one bit if this was fake news, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was true either. I've lived in China for over 8 years, and I've seen people pee in many odd places.
That's good to know.
That's from our international reporter Chris Wagner in China.
Wow.
So kind of backing up everything we said, but saying stop mispronouncing things.
Yeah, I mean it's hard to pronounce stuff correctly, isn't it?
It can be, particularly when I'd have heard it 100 times when I was in China, but I was very drunk for reasons we now know. So
do you know what I forgot to ask you, Johnny? You've been at Carlsberg. Did you drink any Carlsberg straight from the tank, and how did it taste?
I did not drink any Carlsberg straight from the tank, but I'm having the full historical tour today.
Okay.
In actually just over an hour. So potentially that might be when the tank drinking happens. I've been chatting to some people about what locals think of Carlsberg and of Tuborg, and my understanding is that Tuborg is more loved locally, perhaps.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, they're very different beers actually. Like Tuborg the yeast is very heavy on banana. It's quite a fruity lager.
Huh.
I don't particularly like that element to it, because I think that if you're going to have it really fruity, you need a bit of bitterness to back it, and it's obviously got almost no bitterness. So I actually prefer Carlsberg, but I haven't tasted it bang fresh. But people apparently seek super fresh Tuborg to get as much banana-iness out of it as possible.
Blimey.
But yeah, I haven't tried super fresh. So I'm going to see if I can. I'm going to see if I can get some Tuborg straight off the tank, and hopefully it'll be liquid foam bananas.
Yeah.
Which interestingly actually was what so I had very, very young Budweiser when I was in St. Louis, and it tasted really strongly of banana.
Huh.
So they're different yeasts. I was chatting to the yeast lady because she obviously visits breweries all over the world, and she's been to St. Louis and said that Budweiser yeast is one of the smallest yeasts she's ever seen.
What, as in like the physical size of it under a microscope?
Yeah, exactly. She said they sort of vary from like 0.8 microns, or is it 8 microns? I can't remember. But yeah, the Budweiser yeast is absolutely tiny.
Interesting.
but they all kick out isoamyl acetate at the start of fermentation, and in the case of Tuborg, still at the end. So if you like banana, you'll like Tuborg. Right, I've literally got to go. I've literally got to go and do a tour of Carlsberg Brewery. So that's all we've got time for this week. We will be back with an upload on Wednesday. It is a Brewers Association sponsored video about the incredible impact that American brewing has had around the world, told through the medium of me and Brad running around London watching 4 brew days.
Beautiful.
Of collaborations between US and UK breweries. So it's going to be an exciting 2-parter that I need to finish editing. That's my job for the flight home. So that'll be with you on Wednesday, and obviously we'll be back with a podcast again next week. In the meantime, I'm going to connect Brad with the eel scientist, and maybe there'll be an update on that.
Get him to send me a nice long wriggly eel-mail, please.
Yes, I will. I will do. I will use that exact phrase.
Yeah.
So yeah, all that's left to say is love, beer, and eels. The Bubble and Friday 5pm podcasts are brought to you by the nerds behind YouTube's craft beer channel. You can watch over 400 mini documentaries at youtube.com/thecraftbeerchannel, and if you love what we do, support us via Patreon and get access to merchandise and our amazing Discord forum, a positive and welcoming space for everyone who loves beer, food, and homebrewing. Love and beer.